Hi, I'm Princess Gaia.
All right, I'm Dr. D. And so I wanted to share a thought with you. I feel like in some ways, this idea or this doctrine of sadism is kind of like one of those nasty blisters you get on your feet. You know what I mean?
No, I don't. So please explain me a little bit further. How would you heal a blister and how do you compare it to sadism?
Well, it's a lot like a blister because the longer it's around, the more it festers and the more it gets infected and the more painful it gets. But I guess if you want to understand how to heal this blister, you got to think about where the blister comes from, or where does sadism come from. And I think the number one thing that you need for sadism to thrive is a separate space. Or if I want to go academic on you, I can talk about it being like a heterotopia, a space that is apart from normal routines. And you think about de Sade in real life. When he did bad things, he did it in a secluded brothel. He did it in his very remote castle, Chateau Lacoste. When you look at his novels, all the bad things always take place in like a dungeon or a monastery or somewhere where nobody can really see what's going on. And modern day interpretations of sadism share the same thing. You think about with the Me Too movement, for example, it usually involves a victim in their boss's office with the door shut. And so they're the sadist is kind of protected from the outside world. And within this special little bubble, this special space, that person becomes a power, becomes a moral authority, but only within that little space. And within that space, that's where they can perpetuate these crimes on their victims, right? But then you've got to ask, so that's, kind of a necessary condition to go with it, but is that really why it occurs? And I think the root of sadism is that things that are forbidden are just a little more fun. When you're not supposed to be doing something, that just makes it all the more pleasurable. So it's the desire to do something you're not supposed to be doing, and you do those things in this kind of a separate space. If you wanted to get rid of sadism, you'd have to pop the bubble of that separate space and in some way make things that are forbidden not seem so exciting anymore.
Wow, this is a very good explanation, and it reconnects again with our debate about extrinsic and intrinsic values and behaviors. So this is beautiful. So let me explain. If we are resilient within ourselves, if we are full of trust, if we are full of love and joy, then we create our own space within us. So any place then feels like a comfortable and a safe space for us. So there will be no such location as this separate, forbidden space you talked about. So in these means, hurting others is no longer pleasurable, no longer doable for a sadist, because there is not a victim anymore. So I would like to explain a little bit further. So if we are in resonance, if we are profoundly connected to ourselves, we can as well connect deeply to the other beings and to the environment around us, and of course with the planet. And then we realize that we are all one. And this all is one notion again would then make us one with the sadist and with the victim. So there would not be a victim, there would not be a sadist, there would just be a beautiful life. So when we human beings own our story, our great story together with Gaia, and when we only act from this intrinsic notion of love, of trust, of joy, and of freedom of mind, then we can all be who we are. And then we can accept and love who we are and who the others are. So let me say it once again, in other words, there would be no victims anymore, there would be no sadists anymore, and we would own our story. So owning our story is not always so easy. So people often tell me, my clients, my friends, Julia, what you're talking about here is, it sounds so easy, owning my story, but how do I do it? And now today I would like to confess or admit that I also have times when I do not own my story. So just last night, when you and me talked about this series of videos we want to take about Marquis de Sade, I was hit by my own story, and some things happened from my memory. So the memory of the life that brought me here, which was not always a good life. So I'm not very stable in these times of Corona because I'm feeling alone and isolated sometimes. So what happened was that the memories of my childhood traumata came back to me after we have talked about Marquis de Sade and all these things. So, and then I started doing what I sometimes do when life overwhelms me, when suffering comes, when I feel like a victim. Then I go to the fridge, I go into the kitchen, and I eat everything there is. I eat it in an extremely short amount of time, like 10 minutes, and I have everything eaten which was there. And then I felt really bad last night, and I went into the bathroom and vomited it all out. So I think we call it bulimia. And I think in these moments of my life, when I am not owning my story, when the story owns me, I start falling back into this behavior. And so I also have these moments where I do not own my story. And this is why I want to say this, because I would like to encourage everyone who does not own their story. And this can be any time. We can also be for 2 years not owning our stories, or for 2 weeks, or for 2 minutes. It can be any amount of time. Still, there is a way out. And my way out was calling you, Dr. D, and saying what I just did, which offered me your hand from the other side of the world, which allowed me to get up again and to own my story again. So yeah, I decided to share this with our audience because I think it is of importance to tell. And thank you for having me telling it.
Oh, and thank you for sharing it with me as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a pretty profound note to end on. To our audience, I'll say the usual. If you like this video, Princess Gaia, what can our audience do if they like these videos?
Thumbs up, comments down below, and you can also subscribe to our channels.
Very cool. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you in the next playlist.
Bye.